us in this very important event when we celebrate 100 years anniversary of our statehood. Thanks.
Thank you.
President Trump, my dear neighbors, dear journalists, I would like to thank President Trump and his administration for his political leadership in our region and for the very visible commitment which has been demonstrated through a number of high-level visits also to our region. This year we do celebrate indeed our centennial anniversary. Of these 100 years, for 50, we were occupied by the Soviet Union. And people in our country got up every morning knowing that there are democratic countries led by the United States who have never recognized the occupation of the Baltic states. Our national flag, the blue, black and white, was waving here in America throughout these years. It couldn't have been done at that time in Estonia. It was heartwarming. It was a true sign of friendship. We knew it back then and we remember it and we are still grateful for it. Will be forever. Today we agreed a declaration also reminding us about the foundations of our relations. My friends here spoke a lot about what we do. It's always worth to remind why we do this. We believe that peace, security and prosperity depend on strong sovereign nations that respect their citizens at home and cooperate to promote peace abroad. Our partnership is based on principles of democracy and individual liberty and the rule of law. These things are extremely important. Today, we stand together, like-minded partners and allies. Yes, Baltic states are quite small, but they are important because of their location. But not only, because of what we do as contributing partners to the global security. We find it very important to contribute in the counter-terrorism fight. We find it important since 2011 to spend 2% of our GDP on defense. We find it extremely important to remember that we stand together and we form something which we call in my office an axis of good. This is an axis of good made visible for you all. Yes, Estonia and the United States are very different by the size of their economy. But when we are speaking about digital economies, then this doesn't matter anymore. Estonia is one of the world's leading nations of digital governance, and our companies are working with companies in your country to make sure that people elsewhere could benefit. This cannot come without cybersecurity. There is a NATO Center of Excellence on Cybersecurity in Estonia because we have been attacked on cyber long before anybody else. We still work together, we contribute, and we hope that we are really helpful to all of our partners. Yes, we have also more conventional trade, which we do together. People in Walmart going for their pre-ordered packages in a couple of years will see them delivered by Estonian-made package delivery robots. We are proud of this, and we are also proud of our legal environment in Estonia, which invites business to try and test new ideas in our place, which is tiny, and then upscale when it makes more sense to upscale. This way, we work together, both on defense matters, economic matters, and always stand on our common value base. This is the foundation of our relations. Thank you for today, for making this visible, this axis of good.
Thank you very much, very much. We'll take a few questions. We're going to also have questions specifically for the Baltics. Steve? Reuters.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some of your military advisors are urging you to keep a contingent of U.S. troops in Syria to ensure the defeat of ISIS. What is your current thinking on this subject? Do you still want them out? And secondly, could you clarify what you meant about having U.S. military guard the U.S. border along with Mexico? Thank you, sir.
Yeah. First of all, the border. The Mexican border is very unprotected by our laws. We have horrible, horrible and very unsafe laws in the United States, and we're going to be able to do something about that hopefully soon. Hopefully Congress will get their act together and get in and create some very powerful laws like Mexico has and like Canada has and like almost all countries have. We don't have laws. We have catch and release. You catch and then you immediately release, and people come back years later for a court case, except they virtually never come back. So we are preparing for the military to secure our border, between Mexico and the United States. We have a meeting on it in a little while with General Mattis and everybody, and I think that it's something we have to do. Now, the caravan, which is over 1,000 people coming in from Honduras, thought they were going to just walk right through Mexico and right through the border. As you know, NAFTA is a phenomenal deal for Mexico. It's been a horrible deal for the United States. We're renegotiating it now. But it has been a horrible, horrible, embarrassing deal for the United States. This should have been terminated or renegotiated many years ago. Mexico, we have a trade deficit with Mexico of over $100 billion a year. And I told Mexico yesterday that because of the fact that their laws are so strong, they can do things about it that hard to believe the United States can't. I said, I hope you're going to tell that caravan not to get up to the border. And I think they're doing that because as of 12 minutes ago, it was all being broken up. We'll see what happens. But we have to have strong borders. We need the wall. We've started building the wall. As you know, we have $1.6 billion toward building the wall and fixing existing wall that's falling down. It was never appropriate in the first place. And that's very important. As far as Syria is concerned, our primary mission in terms of that was getting rid of ISIS. We've almost completed that task, and we'll be making a decision very quickly in coordination with others in the area as to what we'll do. Saudi Arabia is very interested in our decision. And I said, well, you know, you want us to say maybe you're going to have to pay. But a lot of people, you know, we do a lot of things in this country. We do them for a lot of reasons. But it's very costly for our country, and it helps other countries a hell of a lot more than it helps us. So we're going to be making a decision. We've had a tremendous military success against ISIS, as you know. It's close to 100%, as I just said. And we'll be making a decision as to what we do in the very near future. We'll be consulting also with the groups of our people and groups of our allies. Okay?
So you're inclined to pull the troops out?
Say it.
You're inclined to pull the troops out?
I want to get out. I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start rebuilding our nation. We will have, as of 3 months ago, $7 trillion in the Middle East over the last 17 years. We get nothing out of it, nothing. And as you remember, in civilian life, for years, I said, keep the oil. I was always saying, keep the oil. We didn't keep the oil. Who got the oil was ISIS got the oil, a lot of it. That's what funded their campaigns. They took a lot of the oil, and it was largely responsible for funding. We should have kept the oil then. We didn't keep the oil. So I want to get back. I want to rebuild our nation. Think of it, $7 trillion over a 17-year period. We have nothing except death and destruction. It's a horrible thing. So it's time. It's time. We were very successful against ISIS. We'll be successful against anybody militarily. But sometimes it's time to come back home. And we're thinking about that very seriously. Okay? Thank you.
Lithuanian television. Mr. President, it's not about getting out, but getting in. The joint declaration mentions the periodic American deployments in the Baltic countries. What specifically can you commit to, having heard the requests and wishes of the Baltic states? And President, you have mentioned Russia as a terrorist state. Did you have a meeting of minds here as to the threat that Russia poses to the neighboring countries? Thank you.
Well, we have a very strong relationship, as the presidents will tell you, with the Baltic states, and we are with them. We're friends and we're allies, and we are going to have a long-term, very fine relationship. In addition, we do business on trade. We work very hard on security together. Surprisingly, large numbers of trade. These are very industrious nations. Now, you're from there, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. These are tremendous people and very, very industrious. We do a lot of business on trade. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The second part of your question, of course, interesting, especially because we didn't talk in that words about the rival, especially on our border, but then the country behaves aggressively, performs wars, threatens with nuclear missiles on your border. Of course, you sometimes call this country not very friendly. That's why we investing into our defense, we investing into our security, we investing into reforming NATO, and we would like to see strong NATO, strong alliance, and that's what we are going to do together.
Thank you. Would you like to choose somebody, President?
Your turn. Your turn. Go ahead.
Mr. Trump, speaking about economy, about economical cooperation with my country, with Latvia, what is your message for investors in Latvia, and what is your opinion about the investment in Latvia?
I think all three would be great places to invest. Stable governments, incredible people, hardworking, industrious people. I think they would be great places to invest. I would have no problem with it, although I think as President of the United States, they would call it a slight conflict of interest, perhaps. You might be hearing from these people. No, I think it would be a great place. I think all three would be a great place to invest. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marianne Rohemäe, Estonian Public Broadcasting. First, a question to President Trump. As said, the concern of the Baltic states is Russia. And before the press conference, you also said that at the same time, good relationship with Russia is not bad. But how are you going to deal with President Vladimir Putin? Is he as your enemy or someone you can have dialogue with? And the second question is to our President, Kersti Kaljulaid. Is the defense of the Baltic states enough, or should there be something more? For example, air defense systems. Thank you.
Well, I think we'll be able to have great dialogue, I hope, and if we can't, you'll be the first to know about it. Nobody's been tougher on Russia than I have, and you can, and I know you're nodding yes, because everyone agrees when they think about it. Strong energy, the United States. My opponent was into other forms of energy, like windmills. We're very strong on energy. We're essentially now energy independent. We're an exporter of energy. That is not a positive for Russia, but it's certainly a positive for the United States. We just passed a $700 billion military budget. Next year, $716 billion, the largest ever passed. We are going to have a military stronger than we've ever had before, by far. That's not exactly a great thing for Russia, but that's the way it is. We're going to have the strongest military that we ever had. NATO was delinquent. They were not paying their bills. They were not paying. A lot of states, as we discussed, they were not paying what they should be paying. Since I came in, many, many billions of dollars additional have been paid by countries that weren't paying, and now they're paying. And they will have to pay more, frankly. They're going to have to pay more. So there are many things that I've done, and not only the 60 diplomats. Germany did 4, France did 4, we did 60. There's nobody been tougher on Russia. And with that being said, I think I could have a very good relationship with President Putin. I think. It's possible I won't, and you will know about it. Believe me, this room will know about it before I know about it. It's a real possibility that I could have a good relationship. And remember this. Getting along with Russia is a good thing. Getting along with China is a good thing. Getting along with other countries, including your 3 countries, is a good thing, not a bad thing. So I think I could have a very good relationship with Russia and with President Putin. And if I did, that would be a great thing. And there's also a great possibility that that won't happen. Who knows? Okay? Thank you. Okay.
If I may, Marianne, I would also like to contribute a little bit to your first question. As I reminded you all, we could trust the judgment of United States administrations and people even while we were occupied. We could trust your judgment when we regained independence and seek membership of NATO, for example. We could, because we are on a common foundation, You can walk around the mall and read. It's all written there. This foundation, our compass for both. And therefore, I trust the judgment of President Trump and his administration on that matter too. Now, on your concrete question on air defense, yes, we did discuss the deterrence capacity necessary to make sure that our deterrence is believable to everybody who might want to question it. But you know, equal partners don't come to talk to each other this way, that I come here to Washington to ask for visa freedom, or I come here to ask for, let's say, may you support me for this or for that. We analyze situation together and we find the solutions together which will work for us all together, because we are in it all together. We are contributors, equal contributors, according to our size, to this process of guaranteeing our security. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe I will add that today during our summit we discussed security issues in our region with President Trump, and I am sure that this discussion will help a lot to continue any political dialogue with our eastern neighbor, Russia.
Pick a reporter, please. You could pick a reporter, a Baltic reporter, ideally. Real news, not fake news. Go ahead. Do you want to pick? I think we have enough. Do we have enough? Yes? Go ahead. Pick, Mr. President, pick a reporter from the Baltics. Not the same man. He was very tough. Go ahead. Pick a reporter.
Okay, I can...
yes, go ahead. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Anna Udre. I'm from Latvia. So I have a question for our president from Latvia. You're going to San Francisco after your meeting here in Washington, and you're meeting some people who are making business connections from Latvia and the U.S. Do you see any certain outcomes out of that? Thank you.
First of all, I think during our summit I will repeat again that we discussed how we can strengthen our economic cooperation between Baltic states and the US. And of course, my visit to California, to Silicon Valley, will give, I think, good basis for better understanding what our business people need to be presented here, and what I can help, how I can help them to be here. Because anyway, I think all these cooperations between Baltic states business people and US business people is very important for our societies, for our business societies. And as I said, we are thinking not only about investments in our country, and we are trying to make a better environment for investments in our country, but also our business people are invested here, and I think it is important for both countries, for Latvia and for the US.
I just want to conclude by saying that I'm very impressed with these three great Baltic nations and these three great presidents. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
That was President Trump meeting with the leaders of 3 NATO allies, the Baltic states, amid growing tensions with Russia. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. Brett Baer is the anchor of Special Report. He was watching this along with me. An important meeting amongst these friends and allies, our country with these three. These are some of the words I wrote down to describe the relationship from President Trump. We are strong, proud, and loyal friends. We will be for another 100 years at least. And from the Baltic state leaders, that we are partners, allies. There's amazing cooperation, achievements, trade, and that we share fundamental values. So this was a real show of an alliance, and sort of spoken towards the end, based on a question from one of the reporters of the Baltic states, was the question of Vladimir Putin and Russia. So an important day at the White House today, Brett.
It was for allies, and Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, close allies. And you heard the leader of Lithuania talking about energy, specifically liquid natural gas and the trading with the U.S. Well, that move by the Trump administration has enabled those countries to pull away a bit more from Russia. And that has empowered them in their independence from Russia on the energy front. So that was a big moment. I think the newsiest part, Dana, was the comments about Syria and how he reiterated and doubled down that he wants U.S. troops out of Syria as soon as possible, and they're going to meet on that and discuss that. And he said, though, Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, if they want the U.S. to be in the region and be in Syria, that maybe they'd have to pony up. They'd have to pay for it.
Yeah, I want to play that sound for you because I'm curious exactly how that would work. I mean, the United States military acts on its own national interest, not necessarily on behalf of other nations. That would be sort of weird as mercenaries, but this is what he said.
Saudi Arabia is very interested in our decision. And I said, well, you know, you want us to say maybe you're going to have to pay. I want to get out. I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start rebuilding our nation.
So the other day was when the president first said that he was thinking about bringing the troops back, and then that was coupled with a decision to cancel $200 million in humanitarian aid in the region. Steve Holland, our friend from Reuters, asked the president the question what he's thinking, and he said, well, we're going to be having a lot of meetings, and what he wants to do, and I understand this, you know, he says he wants to start rebuilding our country and not worrying about the others.
Yeah, and he said that all along. He said that as a candidate. You remember he said, you know, take the oil from Iraq. He said, you know, use the resources from our exploits overseas to enrich the U.S. I mean, it definitely was a different turn, and he has said that for a long time. Now I think he's acting on it, and I don't know how it would be structured or how it would work, but it does seem like this president wants to get out there. However, he wants to deploy the U.S. military along the southern border. And as you know, there's an issue about posse comitatus and the use of the U.S. military internally inside the U.S., but he wants to get around that in his meeting with Secretary Mattis on that very issue today.
Yeah, in fact, right before the press conference, there was a meeting where the pool got to go in, take some pictures, and of course the president made some news there when he was talking about deploying our military at the southern border. I think we have that sound for you.
Until we can have a wall and proper security, we're going to be guarding our border with the military. That's a big step. We really haven't done that before, or certainly not very much before. But we will be doing things with Mexico, and they have to do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to do the NAFTA deal.
Now, Brett, using the National Guard is not unprecedented. That did happen back in the Bush administration. I think the Obama administration used some of it too. I mean, we do have a Border Patrol and a DEA, but perhaps what the president is trying to say is that they need more resources to deal with the problem, even though illegal entries are down by about 78%.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not saying that's not possible. They have to work around the logistics. They can make it happen, and they can shore up the border on a federal level. Likely have to work with states and on the National Guard front as well. I do think that his focus on this immigration issue now has taken it to another level, and he's using that linkage of NAFTA and Mexico to really move the ball. He says that Mexico is going to break up that caravan that's on its way to the border. I had the Mexican ambassador to the U.S. on Special Report last night. He said something similar, not in as many words, perhaps in the same way as the president, but there clearly is some interaction between the U.S. and Mexico on this front, and Mexico wants that NAFTA deal to come together.
Well, yeah, and it's certainly not in Mexico's interest to have the caravan coming through its country either. Apparently, the White House's new immigration plan, according to Axios, is to, one, end the practice of catch and release, but the president mentioned that in this press conference as well, make it easier to deport immigration children from countries outside of Mexico and Canada, and then toughen screening for asylum applicants so that it would be, in order to get asylum status, I guess you would have to have some sort of more concrete proof that why you are fearful about returning to your country.
Yeah, and there's also the possibility that the country that they go through could be the country that they are returned to or repatriated to. So they're not returning them to the country they're seeking asylum from, but instead the country like Mexico that is an alternative that they came through. I think, Dana, the most amazing thing, and the president is accurate here, is how long it takes to get a trial if you start this process of asylum along the border. I mean, we're talking 700 days in some cases, and these backlogs are just unbelievable. So that's something that this administration says they want to tackle.
And in fact, the Justice Department announced today that they are going to be telling the judges that they're going to be judged on, to use a word, how many cases they're able to get through. They would require judges to clear at least 700 cases a year, and judges who fail to meet those top standards could see performance review downgraded, and 85% of cases for detained people must be completed in 3 days after a judge has heard the merits of the case. We haven't heard too much yet from the immigration judges. No doubt they're frustrated with the backlog as well, but when you start saying this is going to affect your performance review, that might actually get some changes made.
No, that's true, and that might happen quickly, actually, when somebody's job is on the line and they're being judged by these different guidelines. I think that you know, there's a process here that some of these refugees have got down to a science with the help of different groups in Central America and in Mexico, frankly, where they come to the border, they know what to say, they know exactly how to present themselves, so that they're seeking asylum from various countries, and they've got it down pat.
Well, and I'll leave you with this. I mean, one of the things I thought the administration had done so well is when Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador, had traveled this winter to Honduras and to Guatemala and talked about ways that we could cooperate with them in order to help their countries deal with the corruption, the crime, the drugs, in order to prevent people from wanting to leave. That seems like a good place to try to help solve it at its source.
Yeah, that plus look at Mexico's laws. I mean, Mexico as a country has some really tough immigration laws. They deport, or as the Mexican ambassador told me last night on a special report, repatriate tens of thousands.
Sounds better, repatriate.
Every year. Yes.
All right, Brett, thank you.
See you, Dana.
But we have to do something to seriously relieve that trade deficit. We can't have a $500 billion a year trade deficit. We also have the theft of intellectual property. We have helped rebuild China. So we intend to get along with China, but we have to do something very substantial about the trade deficit. And with that, nothing is easy. I campaigned on that.
President Trump commenting today on growing tensions over China and trade after each nation announced new tariffs on the other, and that is helping fuel a downturn in the stock market with a big drop yesterday, but right now the Dow is back up 109 points. Joining us now, Fox Business reporter Deirdre Bolton. China is basically being quite strategic, trying to target rural America. Big Trump supporters to try to have a backlash.
But it's still a limited response. But yes, you're right. Of course, they went after American wine, American fruit, American frozen pork, and we saw Hormel, we saw Tyson, we saw a lot of U.S. manufacturing / agro businesses, food companies that trade down very hard yesterday. I still want to point out, though, it's a very limited response from China. So far. But that's exactly why you saw that huge sell-off yesterday, is because I think a lot of investors don't quite know how the Trump administration is going to respond. We don't know how far this is going to go. Right now, what has happened is not that serious. But if China does choose to go against, for example, sorghum or soy, then we have all sorts of problems. Then that creates really a much larger ripple. You know, we've said we're going to impose between 50 and 60 billion. I think the Chinese response so far is estimated at around 3 billion. So you can see that China's trying to save face, but not really hit us where it hurts. But I think most of Wall Street doesn't really know exactly how far this is going to go.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, we talked about the tech sell-off yesterday, is are markets overreacting to presidential tweets? And is there a correction that's needed to be made and that the tweets are an excuse?
Well, I do think that, so the president has tweeted 4 times in 1 week against either Amazon as a company or Jeff Bezos or the Washington Post or a mix of the 3. And in fact, the most recent one was he was saying that the United States Postal Service is being treated like Amazon's delivery boy. There's a lot of fact-finding issues with that. I mean, package shipping is actually up 17%, and if you go through the USPS budget, it's actually pension, health care for the workers, the high cost of labor that's really hurting USPS. But I think
to your point, the stock did lose $60 billion in 1 week. So whether it's fair or facts check out or not, you know, it does make an investor anxious. Oh, is the president, is the Trump administration going to really come down hard? Now, what I can tell you is that Amazon has broken 0 tax laws, absolutely 0. There's no accountant out there that I've spoken with who said they've misstepped. But there are the optics of this, okay, if this company is in the president's crosshairs, look out.
Look out. That's right. Although today, as I just said, up about 100 points. So
yeah, and it's up 17% year to date, but it's going to be a rockier path.
All right, Deirdre, thanks for sitting there with me. I appreciate it. President Trump meeting today with leaders of 3 allies who are keeping a very close eye on Russia, the Baltics. Up next, Ari Fleischer will be in with his reaction to the president's comments.
We will have, as of 3 months ago, $7 trillion in the Middle East over the last 17 years. We get nothing out of it, nothing. And as you remember, in civilian life, for years, I said, keep the oil. I was always saying, keep the oil. We didn't keep the oil. Who got the oil was ISIS got the oil, a lot of it. That's what funded their campaigns.
President Trump speaking just moments ago about American involvement in Middle East oil and how the country doesn't get anything from it. Ari Fleischer is a former White House press secretary and Fox News contributor. Somebody who lived through, as I did along with you, in those early 2000s and the Middle East. One of the things I feel that the president doesn't keep in mind is that our presence in the Middle East has helped prevent catastrophic attacks here. I understand the desire to try to bring people home, but if you were to leave now, as he said that he was going to have a meeting with General Mattis and talk about that, then who actually ends up getting the oil? Is it Iran?
Well, clearly, if we pull out of Syria, it creates a vacuum, and Iran is in the prime position to take advantage of the vacuum. But what really going on here, step back, it's been throughout our history. We have 2 strains in America. One is to get involved and fight for peace, and the other is it's not our war, we're not the world policeman. Those 2 have always been in conflict throughout American history. But the most recent lesson's Iraq. When the United States pulled out of Iraq, we created a massive vacuum that Iran rushed to fill. They're filling it today. We should keep that lesson in mind with Syria.
The other thing that is happening right now is the president's going to have a new national security advisor, someone also that we know well, John Bolton. We're talking also today about military on the border to deal with border issues. And also the other thing is that they have to deal with is the Iran nuclear deal. And that's coming up very quickly. So April could be a very busy month on the foreign policy front.
Well, every month is busy on the foreign policy front.
But this one in particular, I feel like it's big because you're planning for a North Korea summit. You have the Iran nuclear deal decision, and then this big Syria decision as well.
As you know, Dana, that's just another day in the White House.
Yes.
And I actually am cheered in this area where the president is pushing America's foreign policy. He's pushing in an anti-Iranian direction, and that's good. The best way to continue the push is to stay in Syria and not yield at all. But what John Bolton is pushing for, the anti-Iranian initiative to withdraw from the Iran deal, is all, to me, well and good. This is a proper use of American power and authority, and I think the president's moving in that direction.
What did you think about the discussion that he had today? Steve Holland asked the president about his comments saying that he's planning to put the military on the border. Not unprecedented. National Guard has helped out bolster the Border Patrol. Is this really necessary right now for our military to head down to the border?
My take on the way the president said that was 100% what he is doing is that he wants to put them there, and he hasn't had the meeting yet, but he's telling everybody in the meeting the direction that he wants to go.
Right.
So a lot of the details of what this is, how it's going to work, we don't know yet. Is it going to be 200 troops? Is it going to be a listening, eavesdropping little unit from the military? Or are we putting active duty troops on the border, thousands of them, to stop a caravan or anybody else?
Well, thankfully,
Nobody
it looks
knows.
like Mexico is going to try to handle that for us before that becomes a problem. All right, Ari Fleischer, thank you for being here today in studio. All right, for some more analysis, let's bring in Damon Wilson. He's Executive Vice President of the Atlantic Council. A big meeting today with the Baltic states and the president reaffirming a strong relationship and an alliance. What do you think Vladimir Putin was thinking today as that meeting went on?
Good to be with you, Dana. Yes, this meeting in many respects was aimed at Vladimir Putin. The meeting today, I think, was a very important demonstration of the U.S. commitment to the Baltic states and their security. And what we're talking about in this region is deterring Russian intentions to actually pick a fight with these small countries. And so I think the importance of today's meeting really was to play to the psychology of Vladimir Putin and leave no question in his mind that the United States stands by their defense.
They were also talking a lot about trade. Now, that's obviously slightly more important, I think, on their end. They're small economies. But the president said something that would really establish confidence. There was a question from one of the reporters to the president. What do you think about investment in the Baltic states? And he said, I think it's a great place to invest. And I imagined that even more than the alliance in terms of the support and preventing any sort of Putin shenanigans, that was actually one of the most important things that he could have said to them in terms of reaffirming the relationship.
That's right. I think the U.S. investment in this region is critically important to them. It sort of binds the United States to the region, and they live right on Russia's border. When there is saber-rattling from Mr. Putin, it causes investors to think twice about putting money into these countries. And yet the president's right. These are very creative, resourceful economies. We've seen extraordinary products, extraordinary ingenuity come out of them. And in many respects, while they're quite small economies, the role that they play and that the commercial ties play between our nations is of outsized importance, and I think this was a vote of confidence in them. They'll be having a business summit today with Commerce Secretary Ross to continue to drum up some of that business investment.
The president said that no one had been tougher on Russia than Trump, and that everyone in the room would agree with him. I understand what he means. A lot of people think that he doesn't talk enough about how he's actually been tough in terms of the actual results. Maybe he doesn't talk as tough because he does want to have some sort of an ability to have a relationship with Russia. But it is true that Russia has an economy that's smaller than that of Canada. And so this outsized importance of Vladimir Putin, are we overthinking it?
I don't think we are. I mean, the problem is we run the danger of becoming too normalizing outrageous behavior on the part of the Russians and sort of thinking that isn't as outrageous as it is. Witness, we just had a nerve agent attack in the United Kingdom. These are steps that the Kremlin has demonstrated they are willing to take provocative steps to do outrageous things. They've kidnapped Estonian intelligence officer across the border. They've buzzed our ships in the Baltic Sea. We've seen nuclear saber rattling in this region, and the Russian military has actually exercised the invasion of our allies in the east. And so I think we're not over-exaggerating or dwelling too much on Mr. Putin when we talk about it, because part of what we have to do in our own policies is not just respond with expulsions here or sanctions there, but a more determined strategy that makes absolutely clear to the Kremlin that they cannot cross certain lines and not expect a commensurate response. That's why Article 5, our commitment to the defense of the Baltic states through the alliance, is so critically important, including our presence in these countries themselves with American boots on the ground in the region.
Indeed. All right, Damon Wilson, thanks for your expertise.
Thank you.
For the first time, the Mueller probe has resulted in a prison sentence, and we are learning new details about the directive the special counsel was given regarding Paul Manafort. The first sentence in connection with the Mueller probe handed down today. Dutch lawyer Alex van der Zwaan getting 30 days in prison after pleading guilty to lying to investigators about his contact with former Trump campaign aide Rick Gates. Meanwhile, court documents reveal some of the direction Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein gave Robert Mueller about the scope of the investigation. Shelby Holliday is a senior video reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and you broke a story that is quite interesting, showing some inconsistencies, it would appear, about Roger Stone and what he said, where he was, if he was or was not talking to Assange. He has denied that, but what did you find?
He has denied that, and we found that there was an email he had sent to an associate back in August of 2016, so at the height of the campaign and in the middle of a lot of the release of hacked emails. He had sent an email that said, "I dined with Julian Assange last night." Now, he's telling us now, he didn't deny that he sent the email, he's telling us it was a joke, and that he did not talk to Assange, never communicated with him. But his story has shifted a little bit, because 4 days after he sent this email in 2016, he told a crowd of people, it's on video, he's in touch with Julian Assange. He's communicated with him. And then he recently told a congressional committee he spoke to Assange, but through an intermediary. Now he's telling the Wall Street Journal he never, ever spoke to Assange, had no contact, no communication. So his story's shifting a little bit. He did send us a screen grab of a flight that he allegedly took from LA to Miami. If he did dine with Assange, he would have had to be in London, because that's where Assange is holed up. But it's a confusing and shifting story, and even people close to Roger Stone say they're not sure when to believe him and when what he's telling them is just sort of hot air.
Well, if you watch the documentary Waiting for Roger Stone, though, that's sort of his
Get me Roger Stone,
MO.
that's his MO. He loves dirty tricks. He sort of loves this reputation that
you followed this story closely. What does any of this tell you about possible coordination between Roger Stone and Manafort, if any?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I do, why we're talking about all of this in the first place is the investigation is into Trump associates and possible coordination. So WikiLeaks released all of the hacked emails. U.S. intelligence says it worked with Russian intelligence and got those emails from Russia. But also, Stone is very close to Paul Manafort, who's facing a number of charges and is also could be in hot water with collusion, so to speak. Stone and Manafort worked together decades ago, and they remained very close, and Stone is part of the reason Manafort got on the campaign in the first place. So there are a lot of questions about whether or not those two wittingly worked with Russian intelligence agencies to spread hacked emails, what their knowledge was of those emails, and what their relationship was, and whether or not they talked to the president at the end of the day.
There has been some question today about a memo that was released as a part of a court filing that Rod Rosenstein, who's the Deputy Attorney General, had said to Mueller's team, yes, you have the ability, and the scope extends to looking into Manafort's activities. That's new?
That's new, and that is a big deal because critics of this investigation, including Paul Manafort himself, have said Mueller is overstepping his bounds. He shouldn't be looking into my lobbying work in Ukraine. This has nothing to do with collusion. Well, we're finding out through this court filing that not only was Mueller authorized to look into his business dealings in Ukraine, but we're getting some hints that those business dealings may be related to possible coordination with Russia, particularly because one person Manafort met with and spoke to a lot was named by Mueller's team last week as someone close to Russian intelligence in 2016.
All right, it's like another one piece of the gigantic jigsaw puzzle. Not sure we solved anything, but thank you, Shelby. We appreciate your reporting, indeed. Students in Oklahoma and Kentucky are home from school for a second day as a teacher walkout continues. Will they get the raise they're demanding by class time tomorrow? Teachers in Oklahoma rallying at the state capitol and their students staying home for the second day in a row. Right now, hundreds of schools in Oklahoma and Kentucky remain shuttered on day 2 of teacher walkouts. Educators are demanding higher wages and more school funding. Mike Tobin joins me live. Mike, the Oklahoma teachers, they didn't get what they wanted?
No, judging by the fact that there's going to be a demonstration on day 3, the answer clearly is no. The catch here is they got more percentage-wise than the West Virginia teachers who got the ball rolling here. The Oklahoma teachers asked for a $10,000 raise. They got a $6,100 raise, according to the governor's office. That's a 16% raise, the highest in state history. West Virginia teachers only got 5%. However, when you talk to the teachers, they haven't received a pay raise in a decade. Their salaries rank 49th out of 50 states. The way one teacher put it, they're madder than hornets, and now the hornets are swarming, and that could be a way to describe the Capitol building in Oklahoma City, which is now packed with teachers demonstrating. By the looks of things, there's no end in sight. A statement posted by the Oklahoma Education Association says, when our members believe the legislature has committed to funding our children's future, they will return to the classroom.
Our kids deserve up-to-date books. They should be able to all have those books. They should be able to have desks and chairs, and our parents shouldn't have to buy school supplies for all of our kids.
Now, the most specific demand we have seen from the teachers union is that they want the legislature to pass or to eliminate an exemption for capital gains tax. They believe that will generate enough revenue to fund public education. Dana?
All right, Mike, thank you.
Yes.
Google is helping kids in some rural areas make use of their long bus rides to and from school. The company is donating mobile hotspots to be installed on buses in 16 school districts. They have also donated Chromebooks so students will be able to access the internet while riding the bus. Dubbed Rolling Study Halls, Google says the program will provide educational opportunities during 1.5 million hours to thousands of students that otherwise would have been spent riding the bus. But what happened to spitballs and things like that? A wish come true for one Massachusetts woman, why none other than the Gronk paid a special visit to a Patriots fan.
My nerves were like gone within like 5 minutes. It was like hanging out with a buddy.